It's the beginning of a new month, and that means a new DC Dark Legion tier list. I'm switching things up a little bit, and this is going to be the debut of my first personal tier list. If you're curious about the change from the prior videos where I've showcased the Justice League of Discord tier list, be sure to stick around until the end of the video because Justice League of Discord actually has a pretty big announcement. Without wasting any more time, let's jump into the tier list. You'll notice that I've included the class designations on the list, which is going to give you an idea of which champion is the top of their respective class. I'll also be including a new designation for champions that were not covered on previous tier lists, and I'll also be highlighting in future tier lists whether a champion has moved up or down each month as well. I made the decision not to include recommendations on star levels on this list because I think that adds an extra layer of subjectivity to the analysis, and this tier list is meant to be just a general overview. I will talk about star levels for some champions when I think that's a key point, but in general, we are operating under the assumption that most champions need to be at least one purple star or higher to unlock their full potential, and really, the idea of this tier list is to provide you with recommendations on what these champions can do at their highest potential. But you will hear me talk about some champions in terms of their usefulness being diminished because they're such a high investment champion, and there might be a much lower investment champion that can do about the same thing for non-spenders or light spenders who want to be as efficient as possible with their roster. I want to emphasize also that these early tier lists are difficult because only a handful of people have most champions at yellow stars or higher. Until we get to a point where most players have the global launch champion set at full red stars, it's just not going to be possible to have a truly stable and accurate tier list. Some of my observations will change drastically over time, and you may actually hear me say some things today that differ from prior videos. Just keep that in mind and be sure to comment on this video with your own observations because I do listen to your feedback, and I've actually made some changes to my tier list over time or my thoughts on the tier rankings for these champions based on some of the conversations that I've had in the community. Superman is still one of the best single target physical damage dealers in the game, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. But as more bleed limited mythic champions and other champions come to the game, and as we all slowly build our rosters as a community, there are some things that we're slowly learning about some of these top tier champions. In particular, as whales and longtime players progress in the training simulator, which is the best form of in-game content we have at the moment outside of combat cycle, it's becoming more clear that the primary bottleneck to progress is stars. Before, we would recommend that 5 white stars was the minimum viability, but as the game continues to mature, many of us are trying to pinpoint more exact breakpoints for champions to figure out whether they're free-to-play viable. I'm maintaining my S tier ranking for Superman, but my current recommendation is that free-to-play accounts only go for him if they have no plans to go for Joker. You realistically need to draw Superman 4 times, so that's 3 blue stars at a minimum, and really 6 times, so 1 purple star, to future-proof him. The only way you can do that is to efficiently draw for him for the duration of his bleed, and you'll have to decide whether you can stomach only having 1 or 2 copies of the Joker if you do this. The Joker remains the best-in-class champion for damage over time. My prior recommendation was that you should try to get him to 5 white stars, but I'm changing that to 3 blue, which is 4 draws, if you plan to run my recommended Arkham plus Legion of Doom lineup. He does get away with low star viability though. I have him at 5 white stars on server 204, and he does really good damage, but you really need to push his banner if you want to future-proof your roster. And this is a good time for me to plug the fact that I am working on a recommended roadmap for some of the top teams that you can go after in the bleed. I know this is something that specifically non-spenders and light spenders are looking for, is kind of some direction on which champions to skip, which champions to pull for. And I've been trying to make some videos on those champions as they show up for the newer servers or the global launch servers. So I'm hoping that series is helpful, but I'm hoping I can also put out an infographic and video very soon on some of the recommended plans of action or paths that you can take as you start looking at the bleed into the future. Based on my comments to the last tier list, it's going to come as no shock to you that I've switched Poison Ivy and Green Lantern in my personal list. I have Ivy built to 1 purple star now, and she's largely making Red Star Mira irrelevant in combat cycle. With Force invested to level 3+, her vines allow her to full heal your roster from 25% health in some cases. Outside of the first month of gameplay, I personally would recommend that you put all of your Force into Ivy if you have her unlocked, and at least 3 white stars. Light spenders should be using their mythic selector shards and daily deals to get her to 3 blue or higher as soon as possible, because that's where the viability switch is really flipped, or at least what I've found as the time when the viability switch flips. We will talk about Green Lantern in a moment, but again, in my opinion, I think Poison Ivy is the best healer that you can get without having to break the piggy bank. We last talked about Constantine. I mentioned that his usefulness was limited by the fact that he performs best in a full Justice League Dark lineup. Since then, I managed to draw him to Purple 3, Clear Stage 355 in Forest of the Fallen, and I've done extensive team comp testing for all the combat cycle bosses. Constantine has very few rivals in the game for DPS. In my opinion, he's the most impactful champion released so far, even without his Justice League Dark teammates. In my view, he is a must-draw. He's probably the only champion right now that I would say no matter what path you take, you should be trying to get as many shards of Constantine as you possibly can. If you're focusing heavily on villains, you'll want to draw Sinestro as many times as you possibly can. His ultimate does massive single target spiritual damage with some residual chain damage to other enemies. He's useful for most of the CC bosses, and he has some viability at lower stars. Similar to Constantine, I almost feel like he's a must-draw regardless of what your plans are, but definitely one of those that you will want to get to 5 white stars or better. I'm going to be breaking with some of the conventional wisdom lately, and I'm moving Green Lantern down to A+ tier. I do think he has a great kit, but he's going to have less usefulness outside of a full Justice League lineup. And for all but the most aggressive whales, he's severely limited by low stars. He's still a great healer if you can afford him, but there are better options for non-spenders. And I actually just put out a joint infographic that was collated by myself and Jasaguar from server 203. This graphic sort of illustrates what it takes to get through the entire source gem pack. And we calculated that it's somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000 US to get Green Lantern to full red stars. So I think that might put into perspective exactly what you're up against if you ever want to max out Green Lantern or Hal Jordan's version of Green Lantern, unless they make any changes to how you can accumulate his shards. And that's a big reason why I've sort of flip-flopped Green Lantern and Poison Ivy, because I think Poison Ivy is the best option you're going to have for a really long time in terms of not having to spend a lot of money to get something. I do want to be clear here that despite the fact that I have moved Green Lantern down to A+ tier, still think he's a very solid champion. I've seen the receipts from several whales, from several high spenders who have done a lot of testing with Green Lantern against some of the other healers in combat cycle, and I do know that he definitely can pump out a lot of healing. So we're going to stick with him at 8+ for right now, and we'll continue to monitor the situation. My opinion of Harley is unchanged at the moment, though I'm considering whether she might actually drop down another tier for the fact that her tag synergies make it pretty hard to build her long term. She's still one of the most impactful early game champions for new players and non-spenders to build because of how easy it is to obtain her early on, as well as her AoE, self-healing, and energy gain. But once you're able to start building teams for tag synergy, she may get left out of a lot of squads. The pre-launch servers just got a rerun of Scarecrow, and I had an opportunity to build him up to purple stars. My last tier list video, I mentioned that I felt he should probably be A+, and that's where he's going to start out on my tier list. He seems to be heavily undervalued, and I think that stems from the fact that most people are using their ambles on Joker, and Scarecrow comes right after him. I do think he offers viability at white 5, which is 2 draws, or 2 blue, which is 3 draws on an Arkham Legion of Doom team, but getting him to 3 blue or higher is going to provide a nice stat cushion if you're a light spender and you can afford it. Deathstroke is one of the 2 highest single target damage dealers in the game at max red stars. His first ultimate will actually deal more damage than Superman's, although Superman's solar energy buff will allow him his subsequent ultimates to do more damage. Deathstroke is not a champion for non-spenders, and even some light spenders are probably going to have trouble pulling him because he does require high star investment for viability, but he's very clearly a champion worth having if you can afford him. And our last A+ tier champion, you'll get tired of me reminding you, but Wonder Woman has a shield and 2 incapacitate abilities. For a legendary, she has very high survivability when you invest some force into her and equip her with good gear. And we can reasonably expect that she's going to be the champion that we're going to get to upgrade to Mythic in the next few weeks. So if there's one legendary I can tell you to invest in, it's definitely going to be Wonder Woman. We're going to shift to A tier, and I'm going to try to keep a lot of these discussions more brief than the S and A+ tier. Dr. Fate is an amazing tank at high stars, and with a full JLD team, he's going to excel. I'm on the fence about placing him back in A+ tier, but at high force investments, his shield can heal as well as any of the healers in the game. He's an amazing champion, and he has free-to-play viability at 0 stars because of those shields. Batman gets mixed reviews in the community, but ever since they reworked his kit to give him some more defense, he slots in well as an off-tank in Justice League squads, and I've been able to push further in Training Simulator because of him. He's best in full Justice League teams due to his last basic skill, but I'm really hoping he's going to perform well in Bat Family lineups with Nightwing coming to the bleed soon in the older servers. As the game matures, Shazam continues to receive praise from those who build him. He does require 5 white stars or more and a significant force investment for best results, but he's S tier in Meta Brawl, and he can get you past several tough levels in Training Simulator. If you're prioritizing heroes, particularly Justice League heroes, he's a very solid choice. Robin is truly budget Deathstroke, and I think he's a champion you'll really want to invest in if you plan to draw for Nightwing in the bleed. He does require high star investment, so this is definitely going to be one of those premium champions that you may only want to build if you plan to spend on the game. But he's worth the investment for Bat Family enthusiasts for sure. Zatanna has proven to be one of the best support champions, primarily because she ramps Constantine's damage, and unlike the other supports, she actually can output nice DPS herself. The nice thing about her is with as little as 5 white stars, you can slot her into Justice League Dark or really other random lineups with spiritual damage dealers, and you'll see significant gains. Hawkgirl is finally in the game now for older servers, and we've had a while to see how she fits into the meta. Personally, I'm starting her off in A tier because, as I've said with other bleed limited mythics, her stats are going to scale way higher than the other champions, and I've seen some hybrid Birds of Prey Justice League lineups where she can hold her own defensively. Unfortunately, she just doesn't do enough damage to be labeled a warrior. I do want to see how she performs with her unique legacy piece equipped, though, before I decide to downrank her any further. I've been investing in Raven's Force, and I'm really happy with her performance over the last few weeks. Adjusting prior statements about her, I think she may be better than Mira at red stars. Her kit makes her perfect for PvP in any lineup, and she pairs very well with Dr. Fate to keep Constantine's AoE engine running. I'm probably going to be breaking with some others in the community on this ranking, but I spoke about it last month as well. I do think Green Arrow is one of the best legendary champions, but he does suffer from poor stat scaling as you star up your mythics. Green Arrow just won't make it in many lineups once champions like Sinestro are unlocked. Still, he's worth building, and you'll see a lot of veteran players using him successfully in all the game modes. With our last A tier pick, Mira is a really good healer, and she's easy to star up, which makes her another one of the staple legendaries. She bridges the gap until you have Green Lantern, Poison Ivy, or Raven built up, and you'll still use her months after you start your account. Lex Luthor is a champion that I'm watching closely right now because I'm seeing more and more players with him built up, and it's a lot easier to get his shards now with the new Training Simulator rewards track. I think you get 20 shards as a reward for clearing the first 100 levels of Training Sim. If you're going for a villains lineup, I think this is a solid support champion to build around. He complements Deathstroke and Sinestro's kits very well. In fact, I actually think Lex Luthor may be the key to helping you cycle Deathstroke's ultimate faster and ensuring that you win more matches. The Flash is a solid support, and I've actually been using him with Constantine to do pretty ridiculous damage against Murder Machine. He's another candidate to move up a tier next month. I've been reluctant to move many support champions out of B tier though. The Flash has some niche uses, and he does require some manual control, so your mileage will vary significantly. Players who aren't willing to use manual control are going to struggle with getting the Flash to live up to his potential. But if you're min-maxing the game, I think the Flash is probably one of the better supports that you could possibly be using right now. Aquaman is one of the best support champions in the game as well, with his ability to push enemies back and pull them into a vortex. I'm very big on incapacitate abilities, and I think he goes well in control lineups like Justice League, where the entire point is just to protect your Superman and help him kill everything. My only issue with Aquaman's kit is that as a firepower champion, he should be doing more significant damage than what he does. And maybe we'll see what happens whenever his unique legacy comes into the game. Two-Face provides decent damage and a solid boost to spiritual damage through his debuffs. This makes him a good option for some fights where you need to push the Joker's damage just a little bit higher. I still prefer going with a hybrid Arkham Legion lineup over using champions like Two-Face, but he's definitely not the worst choice. Cyborg continues to prove that he's just a very solid support champion. He has good tag synergies, and he can be plugged into a variety of lineups to push their damage higher and extend fights. He's also very friendly to non-spender lineups because he has a lot of viability at 0 stars. Batgirl is another support champion that I think provides solid niche use to Bat family lineups. I think she'll be important to boost Nightwing, and I do see her on the combat cycle leaderboards a lot with physical damage teams. Red Hood has grown on me as a legendary. He does massive damage, and I think he offers a lot of upside to new accounts and non-spenders for pushing combat cycle bosses. He's a solid option until you invest in higher value mythics, but obviously, you still have that limitation of him jumping into the middle of the battlefield and, in a lot of cases, killing himself if you don't have a lot of force invested in him. Black Adam is one of the better early game damage dealers. He's the only budget spiritual damage dealer, so he's very useful against the drowned in the first month or so of your account. However, he will become less impactful once you have a few bleed champions on your belt or once you have a few more spiritual damage dealers in your roster. In the wake of kit changes, I'm still monitoring whether Adam is ranked correctly at B tier, but I have to say I'm definitely a believer in his kit usefulness in Training Simulator now. Despite killing himself, his stun turns the tide of any fight, and he does substantial AoE damage when he exits the battlefield. He's definitely worth at least one level of force, or even using him without force invested at all for newer players. The Penguin has a good kit on paper, but he just doesn't move the needle as a secondary DPS in Joker builds. He's budget Joker in a lot of ways, so I won't discourage people from using him early on in an account, but as you progress your roster, you'll notice you use him less and less. Stargirl has one niche use at the moment, and that's removing debuffs against the drowned in combat cycle. I'm hoping with new champions coming to the game, we'll see more uses for her, but at the moment, I would not recommend you invest force into her at all. I'm starting Bane off at C tier in my list, which might come as a surprise to some people, but I think Scarecrow is the better tank at the moment for Arkham due to his ability to bridge the gap to the hybrid team with Legion of Doom. Bane is still probably the best tank in the game in terms of self-sustain, and there are other ways to use him by working with his metahuman tag. We'll see how things go this month, and I'll revisit this ranking. Red Robin's kit redesign has not been enough for me to change my opinion of him. I do want to see how the meta shifts with Nightwing come into the game, and I've got some friends who plan to heavily invest in Nightwing, so I'll be watching Red Robin to see if his stock rises in the next few weeks. Killer Croc just feels like a filler champion, and he really falls off fast as you grow your account. The only reason he's not in D tier is because you can actually benefit from using him in the first few days of a new account. Otherwise, I don't recommend building him at all. While I do think that Deadshot has some decent kit utility, I don't recommend him for players to build just because of the sheer cost to obtain his shards and the fact that you can build Green Arrow to red stars for free. As the game matures further, I do think that Deadshot will find his place in the meta, but right now he has very little tag synergy and he's going to be at low stars for a while on most accounts. I really thought Black Canary might actually become more viable once Hawkgirl showed up, but I don't really see that happening. I'm trying to stay open to arguments that she's better than I realize, and I've been talking to a few players who are telling me she can be useful even with no force investment, so I'll definitely be trying to test her in the coming weeks. Until then, I do maintain my D tier ranking for her. Vixen offers more utility than her D tier ranking might convey, especially for new accounts, but I think over time you'll gain access to champions that are just purely more beneficial, such as Cyborg and Zatanna. She's definitely a champion that you can build for a little while, but I would not put too much force investment into her at all because she's a bridge to other champions and that's it. Catwoman is not worth investing in. She has an awesome kit in theory, but in practice, the only champion worse than her is Captain Cold, and even then, I'm really starting to wonder if it's the other way around. Captain Cold can't even use the cold gun. Enough said. That's the end of my first ever personal tier list for the game. I'm definitely looking forward to working with all of you to gather additional feedback and make this list even better. But I'm also happy to provide an update on another project that you've heard about. So the last few months, I've been working with a small group of players called the Justice League of Discord on a combined tier list, and we plan to continue those efforts. In my prior videos, I've used the community tier list and provided my reasoning on what I would change personally. The new cadence here is going to be that I'm going to publish my personal tier list first, and then I'm going to make a follow-up video where I analyze the Justice League of Discord tier list, the community tier list, against what my rankings are. I'm happy to announce that going forward, we want you to vote on the Justice League of Discord tier list. We just made the decision to open up the voting, and this is your opportunity to make your voice heard. And we're not quite ready to open up the voting to everyone, but we're going to be slowly rolling everyone into the server over the next few weeks. So be on the lookout for when we will be coming to your server or your community and shooting out an invite for you to join. It is going to take a little bit of time and administrative effort to make all of this work. We expect there's going to be a lot of people wanting to get involved. So just bear with us as we try to go through those growing pains, because we're really trying to grow something from just 10 or 15 people voting on this tier list to potentially hundreds. But be sure to stay tuned to my channel for future videos where I will provide a link to the Justice League of Discord server in the description of the video so that you can jump in and start voting. You also want to be on the lookout for future coverage of this community tier list on my channel, as well as content from Unstable Gamer and Meta Knight. And I want to shout out an up-and-coming Spanish YouTuber, Ericles. I'll link to all three of their channels in the description of this video. If you enjoyed this content, please consider liking the video and subscribing so that you don't miss out on my future DC Dark Legion content. And I'll see you on the next video.